Hellhounds, chase ghosts coming, sleep, watch out, demons are coming, run, sleep, hide, spirits, run, ghosts, hide, demons, hellhounds, ghosts, demons are coming, spirits, ghosts.
Welcome home, my little hellhounds. Tonight we have 3 scary stories to sink our hellish teeth into. If you have any scary stories or true encounters you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Also, if you like this content, then don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd be so kind and click the like button, as this really helps the channel. Now, let's get right into it. I won. Posted by MTP6921. I knew this day was going to come. As much as I tried to hide from my past, it eventually. I knew this day was going to come. As much as I tried to hide from my past, eventually I knew they would find me. Technology had just advanced too much, and a mere Google search on anybody could tell you their present location. I was given the ultimatum to meet in the field about a quarter mile from my house, or they will knock on my door. I couldn't have them come to my house because I have a 10-year-old daughter and I'm married. So I put my sneakers on and then left the house. I could get to the field by taking a public trail, so that's the route that I took. My assumption that time, heals old wounds, wasn't true in this case. In college I messed around with a girl who I knew had a serious boyfriend who went to a different college. I got her pregnant and she had to have an abortion. Eventually she told her boyfriend and her father, and I had to cut all ties with that university, which was much easier to do in the 1990s. I make my way onto the trail, and it's a hot day, probably about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I have no weapons, and I have no idea what will await me once I get to the field. As I'm walking, I could feel the adrenaline run throughout my body. I have conformed to all of the society's norms for the past 20 years. I put a button-down shirt on, khaki pants with leather shoes that need to be polished, but I've conformed in a manner that keeps society going for the betterment of my daughter and everybody else's daughters. Now I have to reach down into myself and pull out that person that I once was. That person didn't care if Julie had a boyfriend. The person who didn't care if I get my teeth knocked out by taking an elbow while playing basketball, or the person who could get punched in the face with a fisted glove just to wear his opponent down for no other reason other than to say that I won. I could feel this person start to come back out of me as I got closer to the field. If these son of a bitches want this person, then this is what they're going to get. They're expecting some washed up loser who will succumb to their brutality, but I'll meet them head on. I see the field and I see one of them. They did me a favour and treated this as a gentlemanly like fight. I kind of see or hear no other than this person in front of me. He is a man in his early 30s, and like me, he has no weapons. I pick up my gate, and he puts himself into a fighting stance. I am nothing more than rage, as I'm no more than 20 yards away from him. But he doesn't know that I have the best weapon. As I get within striking distance, he throws a punch at me, and I counter punch at him. He hits me, and I don't feel it, and he flies back to the point where he falls to the ground. He gets back up, and I hit him again, and I yell at him, "You fucking piece of shit, don't ever fucking touch me again." I am still that person that knows nothing more than rage. I see my next opponent, who is about 30 yards away. Part of me is focused on the task at hand, and part of me is complimentary in how these blokes didn't bring any weapons, and how they spread themselves out to make it a fair fight. I knew I had to maintain my discipline. Without discipline, England wouldn't have ruled the world. I have nothing more than fire in my eyes. I conjure up thoughts of Davy Crockett at the Alamo, and how I can't retreat. If I don't end this today, they will probably harm my darling daughter Grace. This has to end today. I am now just feet away from my opponent. He doesn't have it. I can see in his eyes. He doesn't want to be here anymore. He's a tall guy, probably about 6 feet and well over 200 pounds. But he just doesn't have it. Nobody has, or had, what I have. They might make more money than I do, or lift more weights than me, but they just don't have it. That ability to rip through anything at any cost. The ability to say, "I don't give a fuck if you punch me in the face, because I'm not going to feel it, and you're going to feel my punch." I am now within striking distance. He too puts himself in a fighting stance, like the last bloke. I just continue moving forward as aggressively as possible to make him feel weak and inferior. He's expecting me to throw a punch, but instead I open my hand and grab his entire face, and in one forceful and violent motion I throw him to the ground with my hand on his face. His back, then his head hits the grass, then he lets off a loud squeal, like he just got the wind knocked out of him. He was done. So I moved on to the last opponent. He was a guy about my age. I remembered his appearance. He was the one why we're all here today. He is the old boyfriend, who is now the husband. He too is no more than 30 yards away. I need to end this once and for all. I know, no matter what I do, or where I go, he won't stop until he gets his revenge. As I get closer and closer to him, a sense of accountability takes over me. I did something wrong, and I knew it. I knew she had a boyfriend, and I wanted nothing more than sex from her. I could make every excuse, but I was wrong, and I needed to make this end today. He's not a fighter. That's why he's number 3. He's like an accountant or something. I got right up to him, and I said, "Punch me." I could see the reluctance in his face, so I said, "Go ahead, fucking punch me." I could still see the reluctance in his eyes, so I lowered my voice and said, "Fucking punch me." He squared away and hit me below my right eye. I didn't feel it, so I said again, where he punched me. Then I said, "Punch me again." Then I said, "Go ahead, punch me again." Then I said again, where this must have happened at least 15 times, where he sprained his wrist on my face. His 2 comrades were by his side watching in on this horror show. I knew my face was mangled, though he wasn't a fighter. He was still a 40-something-year-old man. I could tell he had enough, so I said, "Are we good now?" He paused for a second and said, "Yeah, we're straight now." I said, "I am sorry for what I did, and tell your wife and her parents that I am sorry." We all hugged, and I walked back home. All I could think was, God, I love that so much, and more importantly, I won. Sometimes people just grow like mould. Posted by MTP6921. Today I woke up and did my usual Wednesday routine to get ready for work. I'm never excited about my morning routine, and I kind of just walk through the motions. I'm not in the mood of listening to music, so I put on classic Howard Stern on as I drive the half hour to my office. I walk through my workplace doors, and with my usual little joy I greet nobody as I make my way to my cubicle. I turn on my laptop and notice Tuesday, with yesterday's date showing up. I have the newest version of Windows installed on my laptop, so there shouldn't be an issue. I am sandwiched between a 50-year-old male named Gary and a 63 named Annette. I'm a 20-something-year-old female who is not in a relationship and has no kids. I work for the government in the Department of Transportation. Some of my job duties entail me going out into the field and investigating road and bridge complaints. So I knew today was Wednesday because I had gone out and inspected the Bear Creek Bridge yesterday. Gary kind of creeps me out, so I was reluctant to ask him anything, and Annette had about 3 different personality disorders that only a government worker could possess and still hold a job. So I reluctantly said, "Hey Gar, today is Wednesday, right?" Gary, who lacked any kind of humbleness, replied, "If yesterday was Monday, then yes, today would be Wednesday." It was obvious that Gary was trying to joke, but he was serious that yesterday was Monday, but it was impossible because on Monday I came to the office and Tuesday I went out to inspect the bridge. I was really going to put myself in the stupid zone, so I doubled down and asked Annette the same question. I said, "Annette, today is Wednesday, right?" She responded, "No, stupid, today is Tuesday." Typically, in a normal work environment, I would go complain or tell her not to speak to me that way, but both were futile, so I just sat at my desk and pondered why I am stuck on the dates being off. It's because I know I'm right. It would be one thing if I confused Thursday with Friday, because they're later in the week, but it's pretty easy to remember that I had my typical regrettable weekend, then dragged myself into my cubicle on Monday and did nonsensical paperwork to prepare for the bridge inspection the next day on Tuesday. So on Tuesday I did the same routine and went out to the bridge and put on my green reflective vest and pretended that I knew what I was inspecting, as I usually do. So I thought to myself, what do I do today? If I already worked Tuesday already, there are some things in life that I'm willing to drop, like Annette calling me stupid. But I'm not working at this damned job another day than necessary. Unfortunately, there is no one else around for me to ask their opinion on what day of the week it is today. So I threw myself in the lion's den and I said, "Hey Gar, did you see me here yesterday in the office?" Gary waited a few moments, like something didn't calculate correctly in his brain, and he responded, "No, I don't recall seeing you yesterday. So then, while I remained at my cubicle, I reluctantly asked Annette the same question. I said, Annette, did you see me here in my cubicle yesterday? Annette responded, what kind of dumb question is that? You handed me the paperwork on the Freeland Highway. After hearing that response, I had chills go down my spine, because I now know that one of them had seen me in the office while the other had not. So I asked Annette, do you remember what I was wearing when you saw me yesterday in the office? She replied, you kind of were wearing an all black dress that went down to your knees. You looked like a slut, if you ask me. I thought to myself, that's about as opposite from me as I can get, as I'm wearing jeans and a hooded sweatshirt. I'm wondering if that person was even me. Sure, I own a couple of black dresses that I would wear a couple of times a year, but why to the office? I replied in a non-sarcastic tone, oh, thanks for the compliment. Hey, are you sure that woman was me? Annette responded, well, she looked like you, and she talked like you, and she was lazy like you, so yeah, it was you. I responded, oh, thanks for clarifying. As I sit in my cubicle, I'm completely perplexed at why one of my co-workers saw me in the office yesterday and the other one didn't, while I know for sure I wasn't in the office and I was out inspecting a bridge. I know today is Wednesday and they both think it's Tuesday. I continue to ponder at my desk and wonder, does this happen often and I just never pick up on it? Everything about my life is so miserable that perhaps this is just a regular occurrence where a day mysteriously gets added or deleted. I said, hey Annette, how many more years do you have to work until you can retire? She responded, you hear this pill bottle I'm shaking? I take these pills so I don't have to think about that. Every day is just as horrible as the previous day, so I just zone myself out. I then say, Gar, how about you? Are you close to retiring? He laughed and said, when my wife made me move out, I accumulated so much credit card debt that I'll never get out of here. Plus, I have to pay for my kids that haven't wanted to see me for the past 7 years. I think to myself, dealing with the public's constant complaints on potholes and everything else on top of being stuck in between the two most miserable people on earth. I wonder why I'm losing my grip on reality. Then I further think and I draw a complete blank about myself. I have no idea where I grew up or who my parents are. Then it dawned on me, I know absolutely nothing about myself other than this job. I mean nothing. I have no friends, no cousins, nothing. I then say, hey Annette, how long have I worked here for? She pauses for a minute and says, you know, I don't know if you started working here before or after me. I responded, well, how old do you think I am? She responded, well, besides yesterday, you usually look like a miserable lesbian or something. Maybe between 25 or 50 or something. Do you still get your period? I typically don't respond to her rude remarks, so I brushed over her period remark. But she thought the same thing that I thought, where I didn't have a concept of my own age. I kind of was like the Mona Lisa, which I'm not sure is a compliment or not. I have no photos on my cubicle of anyone, no significant others. Out of desperation, I say, how old do you think I am, Gary? He responded, I kind of tuned you out when I got the sense you were revolted by me. You've always been here, kind of like a fungus. As I looked around the office, all I see is outdated postings from the 1980s. that no one has given a damn to take down. I think about my one room efficiency apartment where I have no personal effects and not even a television. I get these what if thoughts, that what if I'm not even a human? What if I'm some type of festering mould that grew out of this disgusting environment where I'm just a number, and the less I complain, the more my superiors ignore me. I have zero memories of anything. I derive pleasure from nothing, though even for me this place has been making me wonder about things. I enjoy eating soggy cereal with little to no milk. I have a hatred for the sun, and I only bathe when I can tell people can smell me. I have never bled, so I had never had a use for a band-aid. Gary chimed in on my thoughts and said, "My first memories of you were that you gave a weird whole new definition. I'm not sure if you even knew how to talk. The dot, and especially I was just happy to have someone that resembled a woman in this male-dominated field. Rather than pursue this rabbit hole any further today, I just went with the majority rule that today was Tuesday. I'm sure I'll ponder the same things tomorrow anyways." How I Survived a House Invasion, posted by Snoopickles 1731. This story happened more than 10 years ago, when I was still a student. It has a few graphic details of animal harm and graphic violence, so discretion is advised. A bit of backstory. As with most students, I was always broke, and I had a few ventures apart from my part-time job to bring me extra money. One of them was house and pet sitting. I have always had a love for animals, so when this couple contacted me to ask me to house sit for them for the last few days before they returned from their overseas trip, as the last sitter has bailed on them and their 6-month-old golden retriever puppy would be alone, I jumped at the opportunity. The fact that they promised to pay me the full 2-week fee for staying there less than a week made it just more appealing. Little did I know how bad it would turn out. I got the details, got the keys from the agent, and headed over to the house, as it was already after 5 p.m. and almost dark. As it was early spring, I got to the house, which was a really nice place, but it was bordered a not so good area that was and still is prone to crime, house break-ins, robberies, etc. It did not bother me much, 'cause you know, nothing will happen to me. I know, young and naive. The first 4 nights went without a hitch. Watching movies, jacuzzi, and just generally enjoying myself. The owners would have returned on the 5th day, fairly late at night. I went over to check on the doggo. I got a call from them about 10 p.m. saying their flight got delayed. They are going to stay in a hotel and do the 3.5-hour drive back the following morning, and asked if I could sleep there again that night, which was fine. I was already there and had my overnight bag still in my car. I called my dad to let him know of the plans, as I was still staying with my parents, and he specifically asked what the address was. I normally did not give them details like that, because I was old enough to look after myself. I still believe to this day that probably saved my life. I eventually got to the bed about 1 a.m. and it felt like I have only slept for 5 minutes when I was awoken to a window breaking, and I could hear movement and what sounded like footsteps running down the hallway. The first thing I did was grab my phone and just hit redial. Thanks to my old Motorola phone, redialing was as simple as pressing one button, as my dad was the last number that I had called, hoping that he wakes up from the call. I then dropped the phone in between the headboard and the mattress, in case my dad picks up that he can hear what's going on. I had barely done that when the first guy stormed through the bedroom door. I could see his silhouette, and he had a knife in his hand. When he saw me, he raised it and came at me. Now, one thing to those that is unfamiliar with South Africa and the crime is that the robberies and house invasions usually are very brutal and violent. People get murdered and tortured if they in the slightest retaliate or not cooperate with the robbers. Out of instinct, I raised my legs back when he came at me, and when he came within reach, I kicked both legs out as hard as I can. Now, I'm not a small guy, I'm 6'3", and at that stage I weighed about 100 kilos or 220 pounds, and I was fit and strong. My time not spent at the uni or work was at the gym. I could do an easy 250 pound bench, 350 pound squat. When I kicked and made contact with the guy, he completely lifted off the ground and shot into the wall. Luckily, the knife shot out of his hand as well. Before he got the chance to get up, I was on top of him, driving my right knee into his face, and in return, his head into the wall. I knew that my life depended on it, so I put in some extra force. The guy dropped like a sack of potatoes, but before I could get up, I heard the sound of a pistol cock, and I froze. It felt like all the blood drained from my body, and I became just numb. I remember the only thing that went through my head was that if he shot me, that I'd rather die than be a disabled or dependent on another person that will have to take care of me. He stood that way with the pistol against my head for what felt like hours, but was probably less than 10 seconds. I did not move, and he eventually said in a very broken English to get on the bed face down. I panicked, but thought if he wanted to shoot me that he already would have done so. So I did as he said. He threw a blanket over me, and I turned into a fetal position with my back against the wall, just so if they wanted to stab me, that I had my legs and arms in front to protect my body. Now by that time I had forgotten that I had called my dad, and the guy that I had need is still down. I heard a third guy come into the room, and I could hear what sounded like Portuguese to me. I could not understand what they said, but I recognised it, as we used to go to Mozambique on the holiday a lot, and that is the main language spoken there. The one guy tried to get the guy that I put down off the ground, while the others started to ransack the house, shoving valuables into a big bag. It was about at this time that I heard tyres screeching and a car approaching at what sounded like Mark 1. The car skidded to a halt in front of the gate, and I heard someone scream. It was my dad. The three inside the house panicked and ran out of the back door and tried to jump the fence. My dad opened fire, shooting in their general direction. Now I know my dad missed them on purpose, because if he wanted to hit them, he would, as he is not one of the best shot that I know, and I'm not just saying that because he's my dad. He is ex-army, special forces, or recess for those in the know. Represented South Africa in the Clay Pigeon World Championships a couple of years ago. Has various regional pistol and rifle championship titles and is a gunsmith by occupation. I have seen him hit golf balls at 50 meters with a pistol. Politics and the racial situation in the country would have had him in big trouble had he hit one of them. I grabbed the house keys and pressed the gate remote, and my dad called the police while he came in. I met him at the front door and he walked out to the car to wait there for the police. It took them over an hour to get there. Some excuse of no vehicle available. By that time I had calmed down and started to look for the dog. I could not find her anywhere. I grabbed a flashlight from my dad and started scanning the surrounding yard, and as I got to the corner I could see her laying on the ground. I got to her and saw she was dead. Later autopsies revealed she was poisoned, and the police found pieces of meat laced with poison near the fence. Poisoning is pretty standard practice in my country for dealing with dogs at a house or area that is targeted for a break-in or robbery. I was fuming and so sad. The police was also pretty useless and had a don't give a shit attitude and barely took our statements. By that time it was starting to get light, and I retrieved my bag, phone, and locked the house as good as I can without touching anything, and drove home behind my dad. Only when I got home I got the story from my dad's side. He said he answered my call only to hear the shouting and what sounded like fighting going on, and when I did not respond he flew out of the house and raced over. Luckily he asked me for the address the previous night, and he knows the area well to know exactly which house it is. Now, my dad got there pretty quickly, and he said he stayed on the line the whole time, only hanging up when he stopped at the gate. My parents' house is about 10 kilometers or 6 miles from there. Through a residential area, it's normally about a 20-minute drive. The call duration was 7 minutes and 13 seconds. I met the detectives there later that day, gave my statement, they took fingerprints, etc. And the owners got back about the same time. The rest of the day was a blur, as I came down from the shock and adrenaline. Now, that is not where the story ends. About 7 or 8 months later, I got a call from the detective telling me they caught the guys and I must come to a lineup to point them out. I specifically told her that I did not see any of their faces as it was dark, and after the guy held the gun against my head, I was under the blanket and did not see anything. She reassured me that they caught them on fingerprints and will show them to me beforehand, which might not be the ethically correct way to do it, but they wanted to have as much evidence as possible against them. You will understand why in a minute. I got to the police station, and unlike you see in the movies, there is no one-way glass to separate, or a separate room. They bring the 3 guys into the room and make them stand against the wall. The one which I was later told was the leader, which was the one that I had need, looked at me with so much hate as I had never seen in my life. He had the eyes of someone that would slit your throat and not blink an eye. His name was Joseph Dragon Sambo. He pulled his hand up to his neck and made the slit my throat gesture. You know which one I mean. We left the room, and the detective gave me a copy of his rap sheet. Amongst others, 4 counts of murder, I think 8 or 9 for attempted murder, multiple assault, aggravated assault, over 100 house break-ins, robbery and rape. I was shocked. The detective told me that had I not taken him out first and fast that night, I would have definitely not gotten away so lightly. Now this is also not where the story ends. 3 days later I get another call from the detective saying that I should be careful as he had escaped from them and they have not caught him yet. I was not worried too much as the robbery wasn't at my house and I had changed cars, so he probably could not find me. Also, I got my firearm license and carried my pistol on me 24/7. I did not hear anything after that until about 2 years later when I saw the detective in the grocery shop. We started talking about the case and she told me that he was killed during a home invasion. He broke into the wrong house and the owner was waiting for him, pistol in hand. Shot him one in the stomach and one in the neck, and thanks to the slow response time of emergency services and police, he bled out on the guy's living room floor, ridding society of a piece of human garbage. I want to add a bit of info to this. All three that were caught were Mozambican nationals, undocumented and no fingerprints or ID in the system, essentially illegal immigrants, and it is of opinion in South Africa that more than 70% of all violent crimes is done by illegal immigrants, mainly Mozambican, Zimbabwean and Nigerian descent. It makes it fairly easy because none of these countries have extradition to South Africa, so if it gets too hot they just flee back over the border and nothing can be done to them. The whole ordeal has made me more vigilant, heightened by my situational awareness, and made me a little paranoid to double and triple check all doors, locks, etc. Also, thanks to my heightened situational awareness, has allowed me to remove myself from a few potential dangerous situations in the years after the incident. But it has also robbed me of my peace of mind. I have since immigrated to a safer country, but I still sometimes wake up at night if I hear a noise. So to keep up with tradition, Joseph, we will never meet again as you have passed, but to his cronies or anyone that wants to try something similar, please do pay me a visit. I will arrange your swiftly departure and reunion with Joseph in hell. And to Joseph, I hope you died in agony for poisoning Daisy. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. If you liked tonight's stories, then don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. If you have any scary stories you want narrated, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.